recorded live.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Fight for Our Freedom Radio. And I'm your host, Badbaby. And tonight we are so honored to have with us David Meade, author of the book 2017, The Arrival of Planet X. David, how are you doing this evening?
Hello, good evening. I'm doing fine.
Okay, you're down there in Florida. Isn't that a bad state for the pole shift?
It will be. I won't be here a year from now. I promise that.
Okay. I was thinking about that. I was thinking, why would he be in Florida? I thought maybe you might have a game plan. Tell us a little bit about how you decided to look into this subject.
Okay, well, I was investigating the topic, and the topic is what is up to 4 times as big as Jupiter, so controversial that many astronomers don't know much about it, and is probably the most high-concept conspiracy theory in existence. Now, if this sounds like a Hollywood movie to you, that's what it is. So with a personal background in investigative research, when I first heard of Planet X, the concept itself interested me. First, I think it appeared that close to 1 million people a month were searching for answers on Google. Then I heard an episode on the J.R. Moore Show, the national radio show, where he had spoken with some top naval brass, retired, and they had indicated the reason they'd moved to the Ozarks was for safety. Then I ran across a video on YouTube with a 15-minute interview with an insider, codename Arizona, who had actually seen Planet X through the Hubble telescope. The title of the video was quite striking, The Red Devil Planet Revisited. And there were also some Russian TV news programs which featured a discussion of Planet X. The subject seems to be freely discussed in that country. The Russians generally believe the object exists, it's inbound, and they've built massive shelters in Moscow and throughout the country, both in preparation for a possible World War III with the United States and also for Planet X. Shelters can be, multitasked. Then there was the mysterious death, back I think it was in 93, of Robert Sutton Harrington. His groundbreaking research, many Nibiru and Planet X scientists would follow. He inexplicably dropped dead in 93. He's pretty much credited as the first whistleblower, and he died shortly after leading an astronomical symposium in the early 90s. During his lecture, I believe he implicated Bill Clinton, Boris Yeltsin, and Anwar Sadat in masterminding a plot to disperse chemicals in the atmosphere to conceal Planet X's existence. This process is now commonly thought of as chemtrails or chemspraying. And ironically, just days after the seminar, he was diagnosed with sudden onset esophageal cancer, and he dropped dead 4 days later. And he was the first of many mysterious deaths. So anyway, having studied astronomy in college, I found the subject captivating. I entered upon a several-year-long pursuit of knowledge available in the public domain, but I went beyond that on the topic of Planet X. And after completing my research, I wrote a book entitled Planet X, the 2017 Arrival by David Meade. And it discusses how Planet X will cause extreme destruction. The question is, to what extent and how soon is this object headed to Earth? It's all covered in the book. So the book itself, I must say, is a compendium of information from astronomical, scientific, the Book of Revelation, geopolitics, and it does contain what I believe are amazing revelations that tie us to one precise point of time in the latter part of the calendar year on the Gregorian calendar of 2017. And the existence of Planet X, I have discovered, is beyond a reasonable doubt to a moral certainty. And in the book, I examine proofs of its existence, and just one simple question that posits the theory of the reality of Planet X. Ask yourself where $2.2 trillion disappeared in the Pentagon's budget. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I've had Bob Fletcher on the show, and also I have had John Moore on. So, I'm a firm believer that, this is going to happen. The thing that gets me is when you tell someone who's never heard about it, they immediately roll their eyes and think you're nuts.
Well, yeah, and in fact, that 2.2 trillion is now up to 6.5 trillion missing in the Pentagon's budget. Well, I know what you're saying. It's almost like a Hollywood movie. I sometimes feel like I'm in a science fiction movie that's moving at very fast speed. My book, when I wrote it, I wrote it as an original work, and I think it goes well beyond anything most anyone has ever heard. It's all biblically, historically, and scientifically grounded. So Robert Evans in particular, he would ask a question like this. He would say, why is the government spending $30 billion per bunker, building 2 to 3 a year since the 80s, 4.25 cubic miles a mile down? Sweden may have one that's 30 square miles. Then you look at somebody like Phil Schneider. Well, he worked, I think, 11 years at Groom Lake, Area 51. He says the black budget varies between 0.2 trillion and 1.2 trillion per year. Now, a couple dozen of these may be reasonable for nuclear protection, but why do we have over 130 of them? The very first one, if you probably know, is the Greenbrier in West Virginia. This is a 113,000 square foot bunker, and it's built 720 feet, I think, into the hillside under the Greenbrier Resort's West Virginia wing. And it was completed in '61. An undercover group called Forsyth Associates maintained it, and it provided, I think, 4 entrances, a 25-ton blast door, decontamination chambers, 18 dormitories. It accommodated 1,100 people, a power plant, a communications area, a clinic, 12 hospital beds, lab, pharmacy, intensive care unit, cafeteria, and meeting rooms for the House and the Senate and the Governor's Hall and the Mountaineer Room. So for about 30 years, it was an active facility, and it was classified top secret. And some journalists discovered it in the 90s, and it was declassified, and for a period of time, they allowed tours of it. So anyway, that was one of the very first ones. Of course, since then, they've got machines that can drill 7 miles a day. So the technology has advanced. In the 90s, they could build them at a much higher rate. Many of them, a great majority of them, are in the Colorado area, and they contain massive quantum computing capability. And in fact, the domestic division, of course, as you probably know, the CIA has relocated its headquarters to Colorado. And Jesse Ventura, the former governor, Navy SEAL, he, of course, has done a video. I think it's on YouTube as well. And he's done an investigation into the very strange, surreal, New Age symbolism of the murals on the Denver, International Airport. And I've been there. It's very, very, very odd. And I believe colleagues of Bob Evans have actually been in, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, I do believe I have contacts who have been in the facility right before it opened. And it is totally unknown to the public, but it could be a very large underground city, and we don't know the size of it. But obviously, it's part of continuity of government. And notice they built it inland; they didn't build it on the coast.
Yeah. What does the gargoyle? I seen on the video that they have a gargoyle jumping out of a suitcase. What is that supposed to mean?
I'm not sure. Maybe that's a good point, a good question. It could be. Well, it's like a lot of the imagery in the Book of Revelation. It is imagery, and I have a feeling a lot of it is Masonic, the Freemasons. It's the globalists, the New World Order agenda, the so-called establishment. That Trump would call it the establishment, and that group has been is going to be largely toast come January, and so this is what has happened in politics is absolutely amazing, but this group has been around for decades, and in fact hundreds of years. If you go way back to the 1770s, there was a group called the Illuminati, and a fellow named Adam Weishaupt, he was a Jesuit priest, I believe. He helped develop this crazy philosophy, and he was funded possibly by some international bankers based out of London. I think we all know who they are. Some people who are basically trillionaires, and sociopaths as well. And in any case, these people funded him, and about 10 years later, this philosophy, this so-called Illuminati philosophy, this one world, one religion, New World Order government type philosophy, moved into the Freemasonry community, and then it surfaced. I would say from the early 1800s forward, you can pinpoint actual events in history that were probably bankrolled to create wars, to create inflation, to create depression, create economic cycles, all the way through World War I, World War II, Hitler, and into this strange philosophy that is subscribed to by so many of the so-called elite, has been responsible for a lot of major disasters, a lot of what the History Channel, American History Channel, calls conspiracies. They're behind a lot of it. Their people are behind a lot of it. It's the black government. It's the shadow government. And this is the group that Trump, I think, knows everything about. I think the man knows everything.
Yeah, I think he does, too. I'm on the same page with you there. Have you ever seen the, up on, I think it's on YouTube, they've got, they show the inside of his penthouse. Have you ever seen that?
No, I've missed that. I'd like to see that. Is it interesting?
Oh, I'll send it to you. Oh, yeah, it's all about worshiping the sun god.
Now, who is this, again, about?
Donald Trump's penthouse.
Oh, is it? Oh, so it's sort
about
of...
worshiping Satan.
Are you serious?
I'm dead serious.
Well, I didn't know that. I didn't know his religious affiliation. I thought he was a Presbyterian or something like that.
Well, I hear that, from what I've been hearing, I watch Jim Bakker's show all the time, and I know that he has a whole board of pastors that advise him. And they said on the Jim Bakker show one day that he was very concerned about when he dies, what's going to happen to his soul, so that he became a born-again Christian and accepted Jesus, and and said the acceptance of the Lord's Prayer, and and he does have all these prayer warriors that are praying for him. I hope to God it's true, but I'll send you the video. His penthouse is all about worshiping Satan. And the other thing that makes me suspicious, because you know how they say, watch out for the sheep, the wolf and the sheep,
Uh-huh.
Well, all during his speech, if you noticed, he always kept doing the 666 sign, where he puts the finger in and then after he was elected, they took pictures of his son and I think he's got a couple sons. Anyways, they were all sitting in the room, and you know what they did?
What?
They put the 666 sign up for the picture.
Well, I don't know anything about that. I really want to sort of believe the best about the man. Now, I know that his vice president is definitely a born-again, spirit-filled Christian.
Yeah. I voted for him, because, I mean, he was the better of the two as far as I was concerned. I mean, Hillary got in there. We were history.
Oh, yeah, she would have had us in World War III with Russia by January, February. Absolutely.
Well, but the only thing that bothers me is in the back of my mind, I see him doing the Masonic 666 sign in all of his speeches, and I know that his apartment is all about Satanism.
Oh.
I'll send it to you. He's got the archways that are over there by his fireplace. There's a big, huge round ceiling that has murals on it. The whole thing, it's all laid out for Satan.
Well, I don't know anything about it. It's news to me. I personally like the man, and I hope that that's just an architectural preference, and he doesn't really know what it means. But
I think he knows what it means. I hope that he just turns from it and stays with the Christians.
Yeah, because I think it's going to be an amazing deliverance for the country, because I know he's not part of the establishment New World Order group. He's not part of it at all, and he's definitely separate and apart. That's why the media fought him so hard. I mean, they were constantly saying that the man's going to resign.
They're still bashing him.
Yeah,
I see everything that they say about him all the way through. We're going to, even after he was elected, they were saying, oh, well, I guess we're just going to have to put up with him. I sure hope he does what's wrong. Come on, he's been elected. Give the man a break.
Yeah, well, no leader is going to attract 100%, and he's got probably in excess of 50% of the nation behind him, and he's got, in my opinion, the intelligent, critical thinking people behind him, and he's got a Republican House and Senate, and he's got a very good vice president, and he's got a superb advisory board that he's forming, Dr. Ben Carson. And he's got, Mayor Giuliani. A lot of the people that are advising him, they came on the Jim Baker show. I mean, if he's not deceiving us, I think it all looks great. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I hope we aren't being deceived. How many times have we elected people and they come out and tell us all these wonderful things they're going to do, and it ends up, once they get in there, I do believe that once they get in there, whoever is in control of the world tells them this is how it's going to be. Now, whether he's going to stand up to them or not, but we can only hope. Well, he's a billionaire. He doesn't owe anything to anybody for the election. He spent $100 million of his own money. Hillary spent $2 billion of other people's money, and she couldn't get it. So I believe that he is, let's put it this way, anointed in his own respect to lead the country for a season. And 90% of these presidents that are elected, historically, statistically, they are reelected. So the country may have him for 8 years. Well, I'll tell you, when he was running, he showed me a lot of compassion with the things that he did. I mean, he went down to Texas when those people were flooded out and brought them truckloads of supplies. He went down to Virginia and brought them truckloads of supplies, and you didn't see Hillary around anywhere helping any of these people. Yeah, right. He's done a lot, like Mayor Giuliani says, he's done a lot of random acts of kindness that he's even asked not to be identified with, and I'm talking major financial acts. And so, the Bible says, by their fruits you shall know them. I think the man probably has a good heart. If he's a Christian, I think he's a brand new Christian. So nobody's perfect. But that's the way I look at it. When they said that he met with the advisory board of pastors, and they all say, that he accepted Jesus, he was concerned about what would happen, and I saw a lot of prayer warriors. There was a prayer call that was set up. I tried to get into that prayer call myself, and every time I call in, it was full to capacity. So, and I know those conference calls hold a couple of 100,000 people, so there were a lot of people that were praying for him and that are still praying for him. The only thing that concerns me is that these people that are protesting and rioting, I think that, they're trying to get martial law installed, Yeah, it'll be unsuccessful. A lot are being paid, and like that, Trump himself said, these people are being paid. They're being contracted, a lot of them, and the media is inciting it. And it's all part of this liberal control media. The only thing I watch on TV anymore is Fox News. And then, of course, I get a lot of my information from Alex Jones and Steve Quayle and, YouTube, alternative media channels. And I think that's the intelligent way to gather news. And, so you should check out the Jim Baker show. They have alternative media there now. Oh, do they? Okay, good. Yeah, and he has a lot of, I have learned so much from all the guests he has on. He's had a lot of generals on. He's had, preppers, just a lot of good information about, what's about to happen. And these generals, he just had a general on a couple days ago, and they were talking about the satellite that goes over our country twice a day from North Korea that has the capability of hitting us with an EMP. Really? Now, how does explain a little bit how that operates? In other words, it could launch an EMP weapon. Is that correct?
It is on that satellite. The general says it crosses over the United States twice a day, and Jim Baker said, well, why in the world don't we take it out? And he said, we have advised that it should be shot out of the air, but Obama just ignores. He has just gotten rid of anybody in the military that wants to protect our country.
Well, I agree. I think Mr. Zero is behind the inaction there. That's what I guessed you would say, and it's quite unfortunate. I wonder what his hidden agenda really is.
Well, I know what his hidden agenda is. I've had Al Cuppett, retired Joint Chief of Staff of the Pentagon, on my show, and he told me a long time ago that we have been infiltrated from within, that he works for the Muslim Brotherhood, and that he has purged our military, and he has gotten rid of over 156 top military generals and colonels. That's just the generals and colonels, and replaced them with Muslims. And Al had told me one time that he had gotten a scary phone call from one of the colonels in the war room, and the conversation went like this: Al, we're in big trouble here. And he said, what are you talking about? He goes, well, you know, we have to have high security clearance to get into the war room. And Al said, yeah, I have that clearance, you know that. And he said, well, we have had some of our top generals removed from this room, and they brought in Muslims generals and told us we have to take orders from them and salute them.
Quite amazing, really, really amazing, and it's a Trojan horse situation. That's what it is.
That's exactly what it is.
This New World Order stuff was started way back, 5,000, 6,000 years ago, by a crazy king called Nimrod, who was one of Noah's grandsons, and he built the Tower of Babel. And of course, then the languages were confused. And the ancient Greek philosophers, right before Jesus, the ancient Greek philosophers were part of this. They thought that was a great idea to have a one-world leader. Well, the problem is, you've seen the movie Absolute Power with Gene Hackman. Absolute power usually means absolute corruption, because the people that take absolute power tend to be on the evil side. Look at Hitler, for example. So they're sociopaths, or they're psychopaths, or they have major problems. So this is what we're.
Well, I don't think people realize how bad our military, what state it's in right now. I mean, this general was saying the other day that we are so devastated financially with our military that they're using used parts to repair the airplanes and the equipment.
Well, it's probable. I don't doubt it. I haven't heard that, but I don't doubt that whatsoever.
Well, and you know, it just kills me when I hear that, and then you hear that he gives Iran $1.8 billion, you know, I mean, come on.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's more or less, he's closed the shop on that, and there's nothing much they can do to, they can rescind a lot of these administrative executive orders, but something like that Iran deal is pretty much done, so there's very little that Trump can do to fix that. It's quite unfortunate.
Well, one thing I like that Trump says is that he's going to quit giving our money away to everybody.
Well, yeah.
And worry about fixing our country first.
Yeah, the president of Canada, I understand, called him today and said he would be interested in renegotiating a trade deal with Canada. So he's getting the cooperation even of some liberal Democrats, some moderate Republicans. Paul Ryan is behind him. I did hear a strange comment that came out. My wife told me, I don't know if it's true or not, but by a senator from Nevada that was almost defamatory, that I hope didn't really issue from anybody about Mr. Trump and his history. I mean, you got to give the man credit, and nobody's perfect. And all these allegations that they have against him are absolutely unproven. Most of them are what we call immaterial. That this happened or that happened, or that there was a woman that he might have accidentally, brushed against 20 years ago. I mean, this is insane. I mean, this is insane to even bring this stuff up. And most of it is what is I call campaign hyperbole. It's campaign rhetoric, and I'm surprised anybody takes this seriously, much less some senator would even comment along those lines. I just can't believe the lack of intelligence. I think sometimes when people are in government service for too long, their brains become inactive. You know what I'm saying? And I'm talking senators here. There should be term limits on these people. So,
I'm sorry. I had to cough there for a minute.
Oh, I'm sorry. Good. So,
well, we did get a little bit off topic. So, explain to us exactly how you came about with figuring out a timeline on this and how this planet lines up with the constellation of the stars.
Sure. Well, I think I assume most of your people, especially if they've heard Robert Evans, they know a lot of the history and profile information on Planet X.
Yeah, we had Robert on last week.
Oh, good. Well, he's really an awesome man. So,
yeah, he's a good friend of mine, very good friend.
Oh, is he? Okay. So, well, let's just look, for example, at Revelation chapter 12. In other words, I'm going to the last book of the Bible, which the Catholics call the Apocalypse, the Protestants call the book of Revelation, written by the Apostle John on the Isle of Patmos almost 2,000 years ago, the very last apostle, the only one that wasn't martyred. He lived to be 90 years old or something like that, and he was imprisoned, of course, falsely, and he was in a cave in the island of Patmos, and this awesome revelation came to him, which turned into the book of Revelation. And, of course, he said it was delivered to him through Jesus Christ himself, who is God, so you have no higher authority. I mean, we're not talking Nostradamus here. We're not talking psychics. We're not talking, some popular book. We're talking the supernatural book of Revelation, a 2,000-year-old document, which is the highest authority on anything. And so that's what I went to. I mean, I think if Isaac Newton had been alive today, who was a brilliant astronomer and a theologian as well, he would have done the same thing. He would have said, well, listen, we've got these awesome astronomical programs like Stellarium and so on and so forth, and let's look at the astronomical indicators in the book of Revelation and find out when, if we can, these events are going to take place. Because in the first book of Genesis, it states pretty clearly that these signs in the heavens, the sun, the moon, and the stars, and so forth, are there for the purpose of being signs and indicators. And why else would John describe these in the book of Revelation? And I'm going to start with Revelation chapter 12. Why would he describe these so precisely unless they were meant to be used as historical future time markers? So let's go to Revelation chapter 12 for a moment, and I'll start there. Let me open something. Now, in Revelation chapter 12, and John gives an astronomical description that fits very precise celestial events. So these are scriptural guidelines, these celestial events, these timeline dates. And this celestial event, Planet X, is spoken of in Revelation. Let me just repeat the first three verses of Revelation chapter 12. It says, and there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And she, being with child, cried, travailing in birth, and pain to be delivered. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, the great red dragon, that's Planet X, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads. So, according to astronomical computer programs such as Stellarium, on September 23rd, 2017, the moon will be in position under the feet of Virgo, the Virgo constellation. The sun will be over the constellation, overlaying it in sunlight, clothed with the sun. Jupiter will be between Virgo's legs with child. It will have been in retrograde motion there for about 41 weeks just prior to September 23rd, 2017. And you can take Stellarium back 6,000 years and forward 1,000 years, 7,000 years of history, and you're not going to find anything like this. And you've got Mercury, Mars, and Venus in alignment next to the head of the Virgin. which adds 3 stars to the constellation Leo. That forms a crown of 12 above Virgo's head. All 4 of these events and celestial bodies will be in place on that date, fitting John's description very precisely. Now, the 3rd verse makes a celestial observation of the Draco constellation, noting it is the great red dragon. Now, the constellation Draconis, the dragon or serpent. Well, let's go back. The woman, again, makes her celestial appearance on September 23rd, 2017. And just to summarize, she is the constellation Virgo or the Virgin. She represents the nation of Israel. She is described in the book of Revelation. And this great sign of the woman is described in Revelation 12:1-2, actually begins right before Thanksgiving, when what's called the king planet, Jupiter, enters the birthing area of the Virgo constellation and remains there until September 23rd of next year. And this sign has never occurred before in human history. It will occur once on September 23rd next year. It will never occur again. Now, it places us just before the 6th seal of Revelation. Now, it's a time marker. Now, the red dragon, Planet X Nibiru system, which is a number, there's 7 bodies within the Planet X system, 7 celestial bodies. There's Nibiru, there's Planet X, there's Helion, which is a gas giant, and so on and so forth. But the Planet X system will fully eclipse the sun and cover the whole Earth, according to this verse I'm about to read. It will cover the whole Earth in full moon in shadow on Thursday, October 5th, 2017. Here's how I reached that. From Revelation chapter 6, verse 12, going a little further down, I watched as he opened the 6th seal. There was a great earthquake. The sun turned black like sackcloth made of goat hair. The whole moon turned blood red. So, from our point of view on Earth, the red dragon would be standing in front of the woman who was about to give birth. Now, you can't see it with the unaided eye. The blue daytime sky at that point next year, next October, will hide the red dragon, the system, until it eclipses the sun. But during the full disk solar eclipse, the sky will turn black, and it will reveal the stars, and it will reveal the Planet X system. Now, when the sun begins to emerge from the full disk eclipse, the sky will return to its blue color. At the end of the eclipse, the red dragon will be again hidden by a blue sky. It will not be possible to see the red dragon, the Planet X system, until it starts to cover the sun, in other words, at the beginning of the eclipse on October 5th of next year, 2017. That is an end time. So let me, again, this is complicated, and that's why it's important. The book has so much more information, and you really need to read some of this 2 and 3 times to fully comprehend it. But Jupiter, known to the Jews as the king planet or star of the Messiah, exits Virgo, the Virgin, on October 11th, 2017, after having spent 301 days there in the womb region of that constellation. Now remember this, after October 11th, the woman will no longer be, quote, pregnant. So the red dragon has to make its appearance before October 11th. So combined with a predictive computer-generated astronomical model, the Bible basically tells us that the red dragon appears after September 23rd, 2017, but before October 11th, 2017. So that's in nutshell form. That's some time permutations on the appearance.
So, Robert was on last Friday, and he was saying that the pole shift was going to happen April or May of next year. I just, have you been looking at any of the pictures he's been putting up?
No, I've been looking at a lot of pictures, but not some of his lately, no.
And also, have you ever heard of Scott C1 from the Nibiru channel?
Heard of him, but haven't seen his videos.
Oh, he's been getting a lot of good pictures and a lot of good video. And, he actually had a guy a few days ago, I was watching one of his videos, that the guy went out and he just started taking pictures of the sun with a filter, and he picked up like several objects all around the sun, blue and red looking, and you know, it was you could see it was faint, but it was there.
Well, Augusto Perez, a friend of mine who's an evangelist from near Tallahassee, Florida, he sent me a video a couple days ago of a sunrise over New York City Harbor. And believe it or not, the sun was there, and a few degrees angle difference was a very clear photo of another bright orb, Planet X, the Planet X system. It's amazing how it's becoming visible in this hemisphere.
Yes, yes. And, you know, WSO talks about that they've got some kind of a shield in front of the sun. Do you know anything about that?
No, I sure don't. No.
He says it's some kind of cloaking device. You got to look at some of his videos because it does make sense when you look at the images, the way it has, they take pictures of the sun and it kind of looks like you're looking through a glass, you know, like looking through the bottom of a glass, like there's a round mirror going around the sun.
Well, that's quite interesting. I have no doubt it could be possible. In other words, who placed this? I don't quite understand the history of it, though.
Well, you know, you never know because they have such technology that we know nothing about, and you know,
so
I do know that they're trying to hide it from us. Let's talk about that a little bit. Well, why do you think they go to such extents? I don't know whether you know that Iran has come out on their news and announced it to their people.
Yes, indeed. I happened to see that video, and apparently they're a believer in the 12th Planet, Zecharia Sitchin's books, and the Sumerian tablets, Samaria being ancient Iraq, and apparently they were some of the first people to observe this series of objects many thousands of years ago. And the Libra sky disk, in fact, pinpoints it close to 4,000 years ago, that it passed for certain about 4,000 years ago. And so that's very interesting. They seem very, you know, they're a closed government, the government of Iraq, but they seem, it's very interesting who comes out and actually talks about this. And
Russia also, they have come out on their news and told their people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and the only people that come out now in the U.S. about this go under code names, like this fellow Arizona who watched it through the Hubble Space Telescope, and our government encrypts it and doesn't talk about it. It's very strange. You know, we're supposed to be living in major freedom here in America, but there's 50% of the information, I think, that the government has is classified, and this has to be classified above top secret, and probably even within NASA. You know, they've signed, everybody with NASA signed a non-disclosure agreement with the National Security Agency. They can't talk about anything. They can't, quote, create public panic as if we're too dumb to be able to take it with a cool attitude. It's just, it's very demeaning, actually, to have a government with that philosophy, and hopefully that's going to change in January. But
yeah, I was thinking myself, I was curious whether Donald Trump will tell us once they swear him in, if he ever gets to be sworn in, you know, without martial law being declared and all this other nonsense. But I was wondering if he would come out and tell us.
Well, if anybody would, this fellow might. Donald Trump might. They may not even inform him immediately. I know he's getting presidential daily briefings right now, as of today. In fact, I think he gets them daily. As to whether they will brief him on that, that may have some classification that is highly compartmentalized and sensitive, and they may not even release that to the president. I don't know. I don't know how they handle it. I imagine there's a very small, what I would call Nibiru search team, probably 5 or 6 people within NASA that know everything. And beyond that, nobody knows anything except probably the head of the CIA and the Defense Intelligence Agency, and maybe the head of the NSA and Space Command, and maybe the Joint Chiefs of Staff. But I would imagine the knowledge is restricted to a few dozen people. And
well, I'll tell you, all of us that have been doing shows on it and exposing this have been under great attack. Did you know that Robert Evans was he was walking into his trailer and was hit with a microwave beam, and it hit him in the shoulder and knocked him off the steps, and he had a stroke. Did you know that?
No, when did this happen?
Oh, a while back. They said he shouldn't have survived it. He still shows some symptoms of the stroke. He talks a little bit slow, but, and tries to, and repeats himself sometimes, but he's still out there, going at it, trying to get the information out there. Also, Bob Fletcher, he also was hit in the shoulder with a microwave beam, and it blew his shoulder right out. He was in the hospital for quite a while. He still has problems with it, and they also told him he shouldn't have survived it. Now, Scott C1, about a month ago, he has a neighbor about 2 or 3 doors down from his house. It's a club. It's a biker club where they're all hanging around in there. And they noticed somebody out there messing around with his car. So one of the guys went over there and wanted to see what the heck they were doing, and they had a laptop computer. They had it opened up. They had Scott's webpage on it, and there was a guy underneath, and guess what he was doing?
What?
Firing a pipe bomb onto Scott's car.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, and they got caught. Thank God those bikers went over there and yanked them guys up and got Scott out there, and they called the police, and they both went to jail. I don't know the details of what's going on with it, but, yeah, they were wiring his car.
Well, when they asked the head of NASA what would happen if he detected an asteroid due to hit New York, I think he replied, the answer to you is, if it's coming in 3 weeks, pray. So, see, they don't have any shield or protection against such an object. And there's nothing in the budget. They haven't authorized anything in the budget that's of any significance whatsoever. So they have no protection at all against this, and they know it. And it's coming. Revelation chapter 8 is called Wormwood. In fact, there's 2 asteroids that hit the Earth in the book of Revelation. That's Wormwood is one of them. And but remember, even in the pole shift, there are certain spots on the Earth that will be largely unaffected because the magnetic pole will be neutralized by magnetic push. This depends on where a piece of land is at the time. One such piece of land, I believe, will be Israel, and I believe it'll escape. And a lot of parts of the Earth will escape any significant damage.
I'll have to send you one of the recent videos that Scott put up. Someone caught the image of Nibiru, and they caught the image of an asteroid, and I think that's Wormwood. I mean, it's huge, massive, awesome photo.
Really, yeah, I did some analysis of a couple of photos in my book. One video, actually, another analyst did some analysis, and I summarized it, I think on page 13 or 14 of my book in the early part. There was a Professor Vaughn who produced a 20 megapixel RAW file with a Sony digital camera. He was, I think it was April 11th of 2015. It was sunset. He was flying down the Pacific side of Central America. He was at around 20,000 feet, and he took it through an aircraft window. And it was taken at, I think, 240 dots per inch, which is pretty high resolution. Used a very expensive Sony camera. And using an analysis in Starry Night, the professional version, the analyst did a field of view analysis. He determined that Mercury would be above, superior conjunction with the sun. So the object in the field of view is in Mercury. Mercury doesn't have wings, as does this object, and Mercury didn't have the brightness or contrast of the unknown object. He also did a gamma test on a paint program That shows if an object's hot or cold. Hot objects, of course, generate their own light like our sun. A lens flare would be a cold object, for example. They redirect light, but they don't generate it. So it's a long story, but he started with a gamma of 1. He reduced it by steps. And at point 10, the gamma illustrates stark differences. At point 01, you have the hottest, brightest objects left. He then reduced brightness and contrast and increased contrast. And the hot object fades in, and it proves that's genuine. Then he ran a luminance test to determine the intensity of the object and determined it was behind the sun, not a reflection. And there are wings on the object, which is clearly behind the sun. And this, he stated, was deeply disturbing. The reason is that gas tails of comets follow solar winds. They aren't visible until the comet's orbit is inside of Jupiter, at which point the luminosity of the sun makes the tails of the comets or planet visible. So the object, which is clearly Planet X by deductive logic, the process of elimination, is therefore now between Mars and Jupiter, or at least back then it was. It's not in the outer reaches of the solar system. It can clearly be seen, especially from the southern hemisphere. So as of April 2015, the conclusion is Nibiru is now close enough to the sun that the sun's light is reflected in the tail, making it appear like wings. And right by us down here is Sanibel, Florida, Sanibel Causeway. A lady named Melissa Huffman, she's had over 1 million views on YouTube on her video. Melissa Huffman, she's a photographer, I guess, or was the photographer of the video. She just happened to be at the right place at the right time. And the object she's on her video is very interesting. She pans the sky. She shows the object, then the moon. It's clearly a planet visible just north of the sun. Now, so you go back and you use stellarium. You know the known moon phases. You can go to the derived date. You can take away the atmosphere and the ocean. You can determine the relationship of the stars to the horizon. So you first determine the date. If you follow the moon on charts, it's well below the horizon, I think in all dates after September 26, 2015. Therefore, the video was taken earlier in September. So you look at September 2015 moon phases to give you a comparable to the moon in the video. And it basically has to have been photographed on September 23rd based on moon phases. Now, on that date, Mercury in stellarium is very dim, somewhat above the horizon, in a different location than the unknown object. All other planets are below the horizon, and the video therefore plainly shows an unidentified planet of some magnitude quite clearly. So this is a rare photo from this hemisphere of Planet X approaching us. So there are some real things. The real deal is out there. You have to search for it.
And it's already affecting our planet, correct, David?
I'm sorry, it's already affecting what now?
Our planet.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's already affecting us. Volcanoes. You used to have, we've got 35 a month now. You used to have 35 a year. So it's just volcanism alone is a sign that it's approaching. One of the first, there's a fellow named Major Ed Dames. Have you heard of him?
Oh, yes.
Oh, I'm sure you have. Yeah, you sound like you've heard of all of them. All the contacts.
He's the only one I think I haven't had on my show.
Oh, really? Well, he's semi-retired now, I think, but he may not be available. But
I listened to his last show on Coast to Coast, and I remember him telling George Norrie that he was going to not do any more seminars or any more radio interviews. And George asked him why, and he said there's no point anymore. He said, I'm going to take the last few months we have left and spend it with my loved ones.
Yeah. Well, we have almost 12 months. We don't have quite 12 months. We have about 11 months left. So his theory, well, he comes from a strange background. I worked in the Pentagon. He worked in the Pentagon. Anyway, he was part of apparently a deep background study called remote viewing, which I don't know too much about. But basically, he said that after a certain future point, they could not determine that there was any future whatsoever in terms of what they could see. So he saw an apocalyptic scenario, and he believes that Planet X is most likely, the approach of Planet X is most likely what may cause this apocalyptic scenario. In fact, I've heard another report from someone in the military It was a report partly classified, partly declassified. And he says the report was of a very large object moving through space towards Earth. But the weird thing about it was that it's changing speed, it's changing vectors, every aspect on a daily basis, and they can't get a handle on it. And so anyway, just to brief your listeners, Major Ed Dames was part of a CIA, Pentagon jointly sponsored project involving remote viewing, and he stated this project saw what he called the end of days as being tied to a series of major solar flares over a one-year period. Earth was totally unprepared. And in a recent interview, he was asked whether Planet X or Nibiru may have been the cause, and it was right after the 7-minute point, I think. He said he was certain. He was not certain, but he implied it was possible or probable. And then one of the callers on that same program, I think at 11 minutes, around 11 minutes 50 seconds, raised the point. He said he was with the military too, and he ran across this document I just mentioned, which indicated Planet X might be under some sort of, quote, intelligent control, or at least we can't figure out why it's operating like it knows it, like the military knows about it, that it's operating. So, you know, the Vatican is in a very strange business. It owns the Large Binocular Telescope in Arizona on Mount Graham near Tucson. It's a near-infrared telescope. And the cover story is they're looking for extrasolar planets and advanced alien intelligence. It's chilled to minus 351 Fahrenheit, so it can conduct near-infrared observations. And Planet X is, of course, a dwarf star, a binary twin to our sun, probably a red dwarf, and can be best observed in the spectrum. That's why you can't see it unless you're in the South Pole or you have infrared telescope, or you're in Chile, one of their very fine observatories there, which have infrared capability. But anyway, why all this interest by the Vatican? What are they interested in? Well, it's reported by Father Malachi, who's a Vatican insider, that he knew about an in-band planet which would cause the destruction of millions of people. He said it would look like a red cross in the sky when it appeared. He indicated it would appear between 2015 and 2025. The exact date, he said, is a secret hidden in the archives of the Vatican. Now, he was professor of paleontology at the Pontifical Biblical Institute of the Vatican, and he is known to have criticized the Vatican for not releasing the full content of what's called the Third Secret of Fatima. The presumption is the Vatican didn't want the facts known about wormwood. And in an interview with Art Bell, I think, on national radio, he was asked, Father Martin was asked why the Vatican was so deeply involved, and he responded, because the mentality among those who are at the highest levels of Vatican administration and geopolitics they know what's going on in space and what is approaching us. And I know another Vatican insider who stated that the Graham Observatory is used to study anomalous celestial bodies approaching the Earth, quote unquote. He compared it to what I think the CIA did with one of its secret eyes, also known as the twin to Hubble, called Skyhole 12 or Keyhole 12. And he also said that there was an Alaskan radio telescope monitoring of a deep space probe, a program called SILO, S-I-L-O-E, and that a photograph had been taken of a huge planet moving closer inbound to our system. And that was way back. He said the information was classified well above top secret, and he said the probe was created in Area 51 with an EMP motor. So, you know, the Vatican has a secret intelligence agency named the SIV. I can't pronounce it in Italian, but it stands for the Information Service of the Vatican. And so they've got their own secret intelligence group, and their telescope and its twin are mounted at the focus points of the LBT's two telescope mirrors. Each instrument's cooled to minus 351 Fahrenheit in order to observe near-infrared wavelength range. So the question is, what do you think they're looking for?
Yeah, they aren't looking for God, that's for sure.
I don't think so. I don't think.
Well, you know, and they're so lying to everybody about this global warming, using it as a cover story. And you know, every time I hear someone say, "Oh, global warming," I just want to shoot myself. I mean, it's like, come on, wake up, can't you see? I mean, have you looked at the animal kill list lately?
No, I really haven't. Tell me about that.
Oh, I got to send you some information. All you have to do is go into Google and put animal die-off list, And you will, I mean, I've been watching it for like 3 years. And when I first started watching it, it would say like, 50,000 birds this month over in Australia. And now there's so many. I quit even reading it on the air because I could spend the whole 2 hours just reading how many animals have died on our planet in 30 days.
Well, yeah. I've read general articles about it, but it's been quite a while since I've been in that.
Well, when I first started following the animal die-off list, it was mainly, birds and fish. Now it's antelopes and deer and it was mostly ocean creatures. Now it's a lot of inland lakes that are having the fish are just coming up and swarming the shores. And then when they do a story, if they do it on the news, which they kind of are hiding a lot of that, when they do a story, they come up with this dumb excuse that, every once in a while this happens, they all migrate towards the shore and there's not enough oxygen. And myself, I think that a lot of the reason that all the oceans and the inland fish is because the core is heating up and the water's heating up.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, what's strange is happening in terms of climate is, you do have ice melting at the North Pole, but then in Antarctica on the South Pole, you've got an ice buildup. In fact, Planet X News has a superior, I write articles for PlanetXNews.com, and they've got an article written by a writer I've never noticed before. I'm one of their regular writers. I write several articles a month. But an article came out about 2 or 3 weeks ago by a fella who described himself as an oceanographer, and he called himself a former pirate, modern-day pirate, but a very unusual story, biography, very strange, very interesting. But in any case, he said he's done a study, and he said even if all the ice caps melt everywhere, you're just looking at 12 to 18 inches increase. He sent this study to His Royal Highness, or whatever his title is, Prince Charles in England, and to some major, media outlets, and everybody wrote him back and said, "Thank you very much. We have no interest whatsoever in your study." But the man's near genius level, and he's been around the world and seen everything, and so they just don't want to hear the truth. I mean, I think if people just continually block and refuse the truth after a point, they just can't even recognize the truth. You know what I'm saying? Did I lose you? I can't. I'm getting no response.
I'm back. I'm sorry. I got muted accidentally.
Oh, okay. Good. Well, I just finished that comment on climate change.
I pulled up the animal list. I'm just gonna, Marlo, stop it. My dog whenever I get on the air, my dog just starts being bad.
Well, that happens.
Okay, I'm gonna touch on this list for a minute here. Hope I can. Hold on. I think I lost it again. Here it is. Okay. This is gonna blow. I'm gonna send you some information. Since you're writing articles, I'm going to give you so much information, it's going to blow you away.
Good.
Okay, on November the 8th, hundreds of puffin birds washed up dead. Scientists alarmed in Alaska. On the 3rd of November, 55 tons of dead fish were removed from Longboat Key canals in Florida. Did you hear anything about that?
Sure did not.
Well, on November 3rd, 317 dead seals were washed up in Russia. On November 3rd, 2,500 dead seabirds were found on the beach in Chile. On November 3rd, dozens of bighorn sheep dead from disease outbreak, and bison in the Montana Mountains range. November 3rd, 100,000 ducks were killed in India on November 2nd. Thousands of dead fish found up on the water along the Brewster Flats in Massachusetts. November 1st, hundreds of water birds died along Lake Michigan. And I mean, I can just go on and on and on. And I'm talking hundreds of thousands or tons. That's a lot of animals to be dying.
Yes, and what is the causative factor, the reason, in your opinion?
I think it's because the planet's heating up. I think a lot of the birds are dying because the crust, I got a lot of information about cracks in the crust. In fact, yesterday I was looking at an article where there was a big boom in China, and this sinkhole opened up and the whole road, it was a big, huge highway. I mean, it just disappeared. The highway dropped down. There was a hole that was, oh my God, like city blocks around. I think the crust is breaking and shifting right now, and I think the fact that the crust is shifting and these holes are opening up, I think it's releasing methane gas, and that's what's killing the birds. You know, the canary in the coal mine theory.
Very good. Excellent thought.
Yeah, well, I got a pretty good IQ.
So, what other type of researchers other than myself have you had?
I've had John Moore on. In fact, John Moore sent me his video because I wanted, where I'm at in Michigan, I said to him, you know, I've looked at a few different maps, and I'm seeing that Michigan, it ends up like an island that goes from the thumb angling across the state. I know the Great Lakes, they all run together, and they go down into the Mississippi River that's going to open up and become the ocean, you know.
Uh-huh.
And he said to me, well, I'll send you my video, and my map is in there. And you know what? I'm so close to maybe being on that island. I mean, I'm like 20 miles from Lake Huron, and that's just about where that island starts.
Yeah, I've seen his Navy maps. Absolutely. Yeah, you got to stay away from a lot of areas and at least 100 miles from all coast areas. But in terms of Earth changes, you're just talking about those. I've got a few little bullet sheet here on recent Earth changes. Recent solar sunspot activity is the highest in 8,000 years, according to Space.com. The long-term increase in solar irradiance is heating both the Earth and Mars, according to National Geographic. There's a 300% increase in galactic dust entering our solar system, according to New Scientist. Venus is exhibiting a 2,500% increase in its green glow. Clouds and ozone have appeared in the Martian atmosphere. And let's see what else is on the list. And according to the Keck Observatory in Hawaii, the once placid planet of Uranus is experiencing intense cloud activity, storms, and aurora, according to the National Geographic. So, you know, it's definitely happening. And the Planet X is probably best viewed at the South Pole, and that's the reason for the South Pole Telescope, an investment of billions of dollars. It was operational in March of 2007. So why did the government go to all that trouble to establish the telescope at such a remote location? Why not just, you know, put an observatory in Chile? The northern part of Chile has 10 great observatories in it. Well, that's the reason, because I believe they're tracking Nibiru Planet X from that location, and that is the finest location from which to observe it, because they're concerned about, you know, collateral damage. And the collateral damage when it happens, if you have a 2-mile-wide comet, say part of Nibiru's entourage, that struck the ocean at, say, near Puerto Rico, well, it would have worldwide repercussions. It would probably trigger Yellowstone. It would create worldwide tsunamis. It would impact the Hawaiian volcanic shelf. And when this is triggered, the state of California can expect a 500-foot tsunami traveling towards it at 600 miles per hour. And the impact damage of Planet X can make America extremely weak and vulnerable to attack by our enemy, Russia. and they've got almost 8,000 nuclear weapons pointed at us. And Trump has mentioned, in fact, recent intrusions of our airspace by Russia have accelerated. They've flown within 10 to 20 feet of our aircraft. And Russia has developed drone submarines capable of limited, strategic, and undercover nuclear strikes on select cities. Ever since the Ukraine fiasco, which I think may have been funded by the CIA and thwarted by Putin, our two countries have pretty much been on war footing. And now, of course, they've declared this no-fly zone over Syria. So they asked a general in Congress the other day. Some of these congressmen are just not the sharpest pencils. One of them said, well, suppose, what would it take if we established a no-fly zone? He said, well, sir, if you do that, you are declaring war against both Syria and Russia, which is a world superpower. He said, that's not my call. And some of these congressmen must think it's a video game. But anyway, Planet X may have global and imminent repercussions. Once it approaches, once it causes damage, Russia and China, who are our major enemies, they look at us and say, well, we've been pushed by them for so long.
Yeah.
We don't trust them, and let's go ahead and do a first strike. So Planet X could create a lot of scenarios that are beyond any human beings.
It's interesting that you said that about Russia and declaring war, because I was watching the Jim Baker show today, and the guests that they had on there, they had 3 different guests, and one's a doctor, and he is a major in the military, and he said that our vice president did a radio interview or a television interview not just 3 days ago, and said that Russia has been attacking us, cyber attacking us through the internet, and if they do it one more time, we will be at war. He actually declared war on them in this interview.
You're talking about Joe Biden?
Yes.
Really? Well, that's very, very interesting. The two countries, we've pushed Putin about as far as he can be pushed, and I just hope it doesn't continue. I mean, when we established that so-called anti-defense missile site in Romania, which borders Russia, Putin, I heard a 10-minute speech by him given in front of some international journalists. He said, what is the West thinking? He said, the only reason we've been in Cold War as long as we have, and war hasn't broken out, nuclear war hasn't broken out, is because we have what's called a geostrategic balance of power. But he said once that balance of power is upset, and he said when NATO and the U.S., who control this so-called anti-defense shield, which is supposed to shield Europe from Iran, which is not really a threat to Europe, it doesn't make any sense. He said this thing can be turned against Russia. These missiles can go 1,000 kilometers into Russia. On a moment's notice, he said they can go from non-nuclear to nuclear. He said the Romanian government wouldn't even know. NATO would just authorize it. The U.S. would just authorize it. He said this is like us putting missiles in Cuba against the United States. He said this is, and we pushed him there, and then the collusion between probably Saudi Arabia and I don't know whether it was the CIA or who arranged it, but when the price of oil dropped below $50 a barrel, of course, that's 40% of Russians' exports, and the ruble lost half its value. They lost half their purchasing power. Putin's done a great job of promoting that economy and building it, but when the price of oil dropped, it was out of control, and that was an economic sanction, black ops sanction on Russia by the West for whatever reasons that they perceive. In turn, Russia has annexed Crimea. We are so close to.
Well, the interview, what they were saying on the Jim Baker show was that when this was said on this interview, it shocked the interviewer, and he said, "Do they know that?" He said, "Are they aware of this?" And he said, "Do you think they're listening?" And he said, "Oh, they know. And absolutely, they're listening." And it's like, I don't know. I mean, I'm going to pose this question to you, David. Do you think that they're trying to cause all this havoc so that we've got this going on and no one will pay attention to what's coming at us?
Well, that could be one reason. Another reason is they could be very upset over this Trump presidency, and they could want to create a limited world war before January 20th. I don't know. I don't know what the reason is. Maybe the economics of the whole system is about to implode, and they want a distraction. I don't know what their thinking is. It's obviously skewed, strange, abnormal thinking.
Well, they sure do have an I don't care attitude. And, I think they have this I don't care attitude because they know what's going to happen when this planet comes, and they figure we're all toast anyways.
Yeah, well, $20 trillion in national debt, and it goes up so much every day, about hundreds of billions. Well, the thing is, I guess they're just running it up because they know it's something is going. The global economics are going to implode. Planet X is approaching, and war with Russia is probably imminent. And this is it. Who cares? We might as well print the money as long as we can enjoy ourselves. Now, remember too, they have a lot of reserves they haven't used, and there's most of the gold is probably gone from Fort Knox. I have a friend, Chris, who's written a book on that topic, and he was very close friends with a multimillionaire who was close friends with some people in Washington, and he received a private report and a private visit from a member of the General Accounting Office back in the late 70s, and he said yes. He said, you're right. He said about 80% of the gold in Fort Knox has either been exported, sold, or whatever. And he said primarily most of what remains is just gold coin meltdown. In other words, it's not 995 fine. It's not internationally tradable. And God knows how much is or isn't in the New York Federal Reserve, how much gold supply is not there. Because, Germany has requested repatriation of its gold, and they said, I don't think so. So nobody's been able to audit it. So something is going on. The gold has been drained. But
Oh, I heard the Queen took her gold all to the underground bunkers already.
Very possibly. Now we do have. It's very interesting, which you may have heard of also, because you seem to have heard of a wide range of theories and actualities. But you've probably heard of the Chocolate Mountains out in California, and these there's tremendous gold reserves out there, and they're guarded by Marines, and they're untouchable, and they can be developed, and they can produce major gold reserves. So we have hidden resources in Alaska for oil and in California for gold that we can tap if we need them. I mean, these people are not totally crazy. They have contingency plans that are above the heads of most people. But so anyway,
Where, David, that we had 2 major earthquakes today?
No, I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, Japan had a 6.1 and a 6.2.
Really? Okay, over 6 points.
Yes.
Well.
Yeah, I follow the earthquake maps every day and the volcano maps, and I've been following all this for years, and I see the huge uptake in it all, along with, like I said, the animal die-off list.
Yeah,
I mean, what I read to you a few minutes ago, that was just 3 days. The list goes on for the whole month like that, over and over and over.
Yeah, you have to think you have to strategically think like you do. You have to think like an intelligence officer to understand how the government operates. They operate in terms of covers and legends when they don't want to disclose their real purpose. So for the South Pole Telescope, for instance, a good cover, the one they use is, we need to study cosmic rays in an undiluted atmosphere in order to understand the age of the Earth. Well, that sounds ridiculous, but that's their supposed reason for the South Pole Telescope. So you've got to use your listeners and so forth. People have to use their intuition as well as their rational thought. You have to train yourself in critical thinking and analysis. So, buy and read a good book on the intelligence community and how they operate. Remember, the government's taking care of its own, and you have to take care of you. The Russian government has prepared, they can house 40 million people. The U.S. government They have made no preparations for their people whatsoever.
I'll tell you one thing that I did get some information on, and that was somebody that noticed a whole convoy of semi-trucks, and there was like 5 Kroger trucks, 10, 15 Walmart trucks, 5 or 6 CVS trucks, and they were wondering, all these trucks were like all in one line going down Interstate 75, and they were videoing it. It was long. And so they followed them. Guess where they went?
Where?
They went to one of the underground tunnels.
Well, it wouldn't surprise me. As I say, they're stocking them and preparing for their
Like
own.
Coca-Cola and Pepsi. There was like 20 Coca-Cola and Pepsi trucks.
Really?
I mean, when do you see 20 Coca-Cola trucks in a line?
Well,
yeah, they were all, and they were like curious why, And here's another thing that I was thinking. You know how they closed all those Walmarts and they said it was plumbing, and then all of a sudden the stores emptied out?
Right.
Well, I think the reason the stores emptied out is because they took it underground for themselves.
Never thought of that. Very good thought. Well,
because everyone was saying, they're going to use them for FEMA camps, and I thought, why would they use them for FEMA camps? They already got all the FEMA camps they need.
Yeah. Well, they know that.
But they'd have to have they can't say, well, we're just going to take all these goods in Walmart and make them disappear.
Yeah, they're stocking up. They know that deterrence really is not possible. The mission of deterrence against Planet X and asteroids is well beyond the capability of conventional chemically powered spacecraft, despite the Hollywood movies with Bruce Willis. So you would need a nuclear-powered spacecraft using high-efficiency propulsion like ion or plasma engines. And I think NASA has the Prometheus project where they're under development or under theory. But in fact, I think the power and thrust requirements would be similar to the Jupiter Icy Moon's orbiter spacecraft. So the technology is not currently available. This may be the reason for the lack of detection and deterrence funding. And so, in other words, they know that there's nothing that can be done, and that's why they built the 100-plus DUMBs, deep underground military bases. That's why they're stocking up on them, and so forth.
Well, did you know that along the coast of California, they're putting up tsunami signs if there's a tsunami run this way?
No, I hadn't heard of that one either.
Oh, yeah, they're a tsunami emergency route signs.
Amazing.
Yeah. And I thought, a lot of good that's going to do you. You ain't going to have time to run 150 miles this way,
Well, Planet X fulfills most of what are called the trumpet judgments of the tragedies of the Book of Revelation, where between 1/3 and 1/2 of the people on the earth are seriously affected to the point where they're just totally wiped out. And right now, insiders can see this incoming system with their telescopes. It can't be hidden any longer. The public randomly is videoing and photographing this object. They're posting the results to YouTube or to places like where I write for, planetxnews.com. And,
send me that link so I can start looking at some of these articles.
Yeah, well, I've written about 30-some-odd articles for them, and there's 3 other staff writers for Planet X News, and then occasionally independent writers will write for them. And but it's quite interesting. Around the flood in the time of Noah, the Sumerians existed in modern-day Iraq, and Sumer was the original name of this territory. And the Sumerians were very intelligent people. They were using modern-day agricultural planning, using wheels. They had their own language. They drew by pictures. And as you mentioned earlier, these Sumerian tablets contained a profusion of astronomical texts. Their tablets represent a 10th planet in our solar system, Planet X. And the last time it nearly collided with our planet may have been around the time of Noah. And during Noah's time, there was no rain, but rather the seasons were minimal, and dew condensates every morning, and that watered the flora. There were springs of pure water. Now, the majority of the Earth back then was land, and the axis was tilted and only minimally, so temperatures were mild. I would say at the time the solar year was 360 days. The orbit of the Earth was a circle, and after Noah's grandfather Methuselah died, the next day the rains and the floods came, and man was eliminated for the Earth, except for Noah and his compatriots, 8 people. Now, Planet X came through the solar system. It disrupted the blanket of vapor, caused 40 days of waterfall-type rain upon the Earth, and actually he was in that arc for about a year and 10 days. Now, geologists tell us that during the passage of Planet X, fissures opened deep in the Earth's surface, and the underground water had an upward trajectory, causing it to flow as high as 7 miles at that time above the Earth's surface. And, of course, at that time, land masses were removed, and continents were formed. The Ice Age occurred. The entire surface of the Earth was covered in water. And during the tectonic shifts of that period, large sections of land were pushed upward, and these formed the high mountain ranges of the Earth as we know them today, the Himalayas and so forth. Fish that were deposited in the higher peaks were fossilized, and the settling of the water created the ocean basins. And the Earth's orbit then became more oval, and it took 365.2 days before Noah could exit the Ark after 1 year. So Planet X is here again this decade, and it's an entire solar system, a mini solar system, and a binary twin to our sun. And its primary component is a dark star that's orbited by planetoids, one of which the Sumerians call Nibiru, the winged destroyer, the planet of the crossing. The Hopi Indians call this the blue Kachina and the red Kachina. And near Arabia, Arizona, I think there's a petroglyph known as Prophecy Rock. It symbolizes many Hopi prophecies. An ancient Hopi Indian prophecy states when the blue star Kachina makes its appearance in the heavens, the fifth world will emerge. Well, today it's not far off, and we're going to be facing tsunamis, volcanic eruptions, and earthquakes they're already heralding, I would say, its approach. So,
are you familiar with the executive order that Obama just signed about EMPs and solar weather that could possibly affect our nation?
No, didn't hear that, no.
They were talking about it on Jim Baker's show the other day. You got to start watching Jim Baker.
Jim Baker sounds very interesting. I mean, I like him. I mean, I've glanced at his show from time to time. I haven't had much time recently, but...
Well, you can, I'll send you the link, and you can go into his archives. All of his past shows are, you just go to Jim Baker Live, and you scroll down, and all of his past shows are on there, and he's had a lot of prominent guests on there. And I get a lot of information from there, about military people, and, they don't talk about Planet X. They have mentioned it a little bit here and there. They don't talk about that a lot. They talk about what's happening in our world right now a lot. But, yeah, Obama just signed an executive order, and it stated that there is a possibility that we will have EMP effects on our nation from solar flares, solar space, what did he call it? Solar space weather is what he's calling it.
Yeah, well, the last time that happened was in September of 1859, and the Earth's inhabitants experienced what was the greatest solar storm in history. It was called the Carrington event, and this storm short-circuited telegraph wires. It caused massive fires. The light show you can watch in the far north, the Aurora Borealis, I think was seen as far south as Cuba, Bahamas, and Hawaii. Spark discharges back then even set the telegraph paper on fire. The electrical grid, of course, was in its infancy, just a few telegraph wires in larger cities, and so there was no major impact on the society of that day. It was an agricultural society. But Planet X's arrival will create an event that occurs on the surface of the sun that releases just what you're talking about, a tremendous amount of energy in the form of a solar flare or coronal mass ejection, which is an explosive burst of very hot electrified gas that has a mass that exceeds that of Mount Everest. Now, the X-rays will hit the Earth first. That will take about 8 minutes, 7 to 8 minutes. They travel at the speed of light. And then you'll see disruption. You'll see there'll be a red flag warning for those who are watching because the GPS satellites, communication satellites are going to get knocked out. And then about 3 to 4 days later, you'll get the coronal mass ejection. But this time events will be different. This event will bring down the electrical grid, that's what the government's concerned about.
Yeah, and that's what he says in this. And as soon as they started talking about it, I went, oh, he's getting ready for Planet X.
Yeah.
Because it's going to fry our electrical grid. And he's trying to cover it up by saying, well, he was trying to say that it's going to be solar flares from the sun.
Well, but what causes the solar flares from the sun? They've been restrained so far because there's been no major cost factor to produce them. But it's all going to change. And this event will bring down the grid. The shelves on the grocery stores will be cleaned out. Banks and ATMs don't work without electric current. You won't have gas pumps operating. Food transportation will stop. You'll have rioting and looting. Communication satellites will be down. The 911 function on the phone isn't going to work. And for as long as it lasts, until new transformers can be built or imported, basically society will be in chaos. And this will be the calling card of Planet X upon its near approach to our Earth and Sun at the end of...
So how long do you think before we see Planet X will that go down? Because it seems to me like that we're going to be experiencing things like that for like months before the actual shift, don't you think?
Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that could start in the months before. Certainly in the fall of 2017. Absolutely. The fall of 2017 is when this all hits, and all the details are in my book, Planet X 2017 Arrival. But it's on Amazon.com and other popular electronics. It's printed, it's audio, and it's electronic, and the state of California is at very high risk. Florida is at very high risk. Arizona and Colorado pretty safe. Ozarks pretty safe. California is highly dangerous, and I think cities without mountains as a backdrop, they'll be washed out to sea. You'll have very high-level quakes that will create broken gas and water lines. San Francisco is right on the San Andreas and related fault lines. A lot of the population will be trapped. Water will probably overflow the city, minimal survival. And I'd say in Arizona, the Hoover Dam will probably not survive the high Richter levels of earthquake activity. The area around Tucson is pretty safe. Florida, of course, its highest elevation is 105 meters in the Panhandle. That part of the state may be okay. But as for Central and South Florida and the Keys, these parts will be devastated by a tide of water. Colorado is a very safe area. As I said, the domestic division of the CIA has relocated to Colorado. So that should give you a lot of clues right there. Eastern Colorado has plains and various rivers, and these are a port of safety. The Ozarks, which are northern Arkansas and southern Missouri, have an average elevation of close to 1,000 feet. They're self-sufficient with water supply, and they're isolated from large metropolitan areas, and absolutely well enough inland to avoid flooding through tidal waves. So there are safe areas.
Well, Al Cuppett was saying that a lot of the FBI and CIA that are retired are going down below the equator and buying property.
Oh, yeah, a lot of the top military brass that have the nice pensions, they can afford to go down to South America or Central America. And I know some that are leaving the United States. And that can even be there's books written on that topic if you want to Google them. They call strategic relocation. What parts of the world are safe? And I would say any coastal area is of high concern. So even if you move to South America, you've got to stay 100 miles from the coast. But anyway, that's true. Many people are exiting the United States, I think not only because of the approach of Planet X next year, but probably because they're concerned about Russia and China and what their ultimate intention is, and so forth. And they're concerned about this. Before Trump was elected, they were concerned about the New World Order.
Well, and I'll tell you another thing that I think's a cover. You see all these movie stars that are saying, if Trump gets elected, I'm leaving the United States. Well, if they just up and leave the United States without an excuse, everyone's going to be going, why are they all leaving? I think they're using this Trump as an excuse for a cover story.
It wouldn't surprise me because those people are pretty sharp. I mean, they come across, they dumb down to the public, but guess what? They're very sharp people. That James Cameron, who did the film about the Titanic with Leonardo DiCaprio and so forth, he's left the United States years ago. He knows a lot, and I think some of these people have it's finally hit them what's happening overall between the multiplicity of problems they will encounter if they stay, especially living in California. California is probably the worst single state to be in. So
yeah, and that's where a lot of them are leaving from.
Yeah, so they could be using that.
I think it's because they're being told, well, we can't have you all just up and leave. That'll look suspicious. Everybody will start believing this Nubaru story. So we'll just make it look like you're mad because of this president, and we'll use that.
Yeah, because it makes very little sense at all. I mean, Trump was very composed and very gracious in his acceptance speech at 3 a.m. in the morning after a long day. I mean, the man has a smooth temperament. He's nobody to be feared. He's very stable. He has very good judgment. It makes no sense for some of these Hollywood types to say, because he's in, I'm leaving. It makes no sense at all. Something's wrong.
Well, I always look below. I look underneath the carpet for what they're sweeping under there.
Right. Well, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I may have to get going in a minute or two.
Okay, I do have one question in the chat room. I'm sorry they had asked, and someone wanted to know, what do you think of M. Huffman's video? Do you know who that is?
Melissa Huffman, Sanibel Island, right by us. In fact, I did a brief comment on that earlier. It's a real video. It's been analyzed. It has been photographically analyzed. It's for real. It is a strange anomaly to be able to pick that up from the northern hemisphere at this time, but she happened to be in the right place at the right time. It's been analyzed through stellarium analysis, through moon phase analysis, and there is no explanation for Melissa Huffman's video other than Planet X. It is a real video, and I understand it has attracted close to 1 million or more views on YouTube.
Now, I have not seen it, so you're going to have to send me that link.
Oh, yeah, I will. I will absolutely do that tomorrow. And, again, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. And
a pleasure speaking with you, David, and I will get some links out to you and show you some phenomenal film and some of the things that I've uncovered, and maybe we can put our heads together and warn some more people. But I really appreciate, and I really do believe that the constellation of the stars is the answer in the Bible, and I don't think the shift is going to happen in the spring. I think it is going to be in October, like you said.
Yeah, October is the month to watch next year. That is the month I think everything is going to happen. And
I believe that next year is going to be a horrible year for the planet as far as volcanoes and earthquakes and weather, but I don't think the actual shift is going to go down to, like you say, in October. Excellent work. I appreciate you coming on, and I commend you for everything that you're doing for everybody out here.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you again, and send me links, and I'll do the same with you.
Okay, honey, and you have a blessed night.
Oh, you too. Good night.
Good night. Okay, everybody, I think that was a great interview. I hope you all enjoyed it. I mean, I think he's got it down pat. Everybody keeps wanting a date, so there it is for you. We're going to go through a wild ride for the next year, but then October will be it. So he had said earlier on, we've got about 11 months left. So make the best of them. And, like I was saying last week, if you've got fences to mend, someone to tell you're sorry, or someone you want to reconcile with, now's the time to do it, because there isn't much time left. And I'm not going to worry about it. I look at it this way. I did my job, and when I'm done, I'm done. I know where I'm going. But anyways, I am going to try to have Scott and WSO come back next week. I haven't got a confirmation on it, but we will see. And I'm glad you all joined me tonight, and look for me out here next